Juventus, Chelsea, Inter Milan, and now Napoli. Antonio Conte has always been a man that won in his first seasons at a new club, but how does he do and why does it not work out in the second seasons? Well, in this video we go through all his tactics from his Juventus days to how he has created a new plan at Napoli to have great seasons. Well, what better club to start from than from the club he played his heart and soul for, Juventus, one of Italy's most successful clubs, which was stuck in a rut, finishing 7th in Serie A 2 years in a row. Not exactly the Juventus standard, right? So they brought in their former captain, Antonio Conte, a man who had just promoted Siena to Serie A. Now, at that point, Conte wasn't exactly a household name as a coach. His only other stint in Serie A with Atalanta, yeah, that didn't end well. He left them sitting in 19th place mid-season. But this was a different story. Conte arrived with his reputation for being a tactical purist, someone who lived and breathed the 4-2-4 formation. That's how he started at Juventus too. He used this high-pressing, organised style where wingers pinned the opposition's fullbacks and defenders exchanged passes patiently. It was all about pulling the other team out of shape and then, bam, hitting them with fast vertical play. But the best part? Conte wasn't too proud to change things up when he needed to. Take the opening game of that season against Parma. Juventus started in his beloved 4-2-4, but as the game progressed, he made a switch to 4-3-3. He brought on Arturo Vidal, a player he barely knew at the time, but by the end of the season, Vidal had proven to be a total beast with 17 goals and 13 assists. Conte realised he had a game-changer on his hands and never looked back from that 4-3-3. Juventus dominated that season under Conte. They led Serie A in both possession and tackles, and it was all down to their tactical setup. Wingers stayed wide, stretching defences, while midfielders like Vidal and Marchisio ran box-to-box, covering every blade of grass. And Pirlo? He was the puppet master, dictating play from deep. Juventus became this machine, not just holding possession, but choking opponents with relentless pressing when they lost the ball. And guess what? Conte's tactics weren't just about looking pretty, they delivered results. In his very first season at Juventus, he took them from 7th place to the top of Serie A, going undefeated in the league. Yep, undefeated. No one saw that coming. He didn't just win the league, he did it in style, and in case that wasn't enough, Juventus also reached the Coppa Italia final, only losing to Napoli. Conte transformed Juventus from a team stuck in the mud to an unstoppable force, winning his first Serie A title in his debut season. That's why they say, when you bring Conte in, success follows quickly. But his next club, he would do something miraculous in their first ever season. So, you know how some teams win a title and it's just business as usual? Yeah, that was not the case for Conte and his Chelsea side in 2016-17. They didn't just win, they completely bossed the Premier League, racking up 93 points, a record 30 wins, and a 13-game winning streak. Conte was on fire, and they gave him the Manager of the Season award as a little thank you. But how did he do it? What exactly made Chelsea that good? Now, we all know formations can get a bit overhyped sometimes, right? But in Conte's case, it was the switch in formation that completely flipped Chelsea's fortunes. He started the season with a standard 4-2-3-1, and it wasn't going great. 3 wins, a draw and 2 losses, with Chelsea chilling in 8th place. Not ideal. The game changer came during a 3-0 thrashing by Arsenal. It's halftime, and Conte's like, we need something drastic. So he switches to a back 3, going for a 3-4-3, and boom, magic happened. They never looked back. Chelsea went on a tear, and that back 3 became the blueprint not just for them, but for the entire league. Before Chelsea adopted the 3-4-3, it had only been used 10 times across all teams that season. After Chelsea made the switch, it was used 130 times by the end of the season, and not just by them. Teams like Man City, Spurs, and even Arsenal jumped on the back 3 bandwagon. Conte didn't just win the league, he changed the Premier League's playing style. His preferred starting 11 in that 3-4-3 looked like this: Courtois in goal, a back three of Azpilicueta, David Luiz, and Gary Cahill, wing-backs Victor Moses and Marcos Alonso, N'Golo Kante and Nemanja Matic holding down midfield, and Pedro, Diego Costa and Eden Hazard up front. The beauty of this system was how Conte maximised the strengths of individual players by giving them roles that suited their talents. Like Victor Moses, who saw that coming? He went from being a decent winger to an absolute revelation at wing-back, and Alonso, who was questionable as a traditional left-back, found his calling as a wing-back, getting up and down the field like he was born for it. David Luiz, the guy who'd been the punchline of countless jokes for his wild defending, looked like a rock in Conte's back three. He had more freedom, more cover, and could finally show off his incredible passing range without worrying about a defensive collapse every 2 minutes. Up front, Diego Costa bullied defenders with his physical presence, while Hazard, who had a free role, could roam all over the place, dropping deep to pick up the ball or cutting inside to wreak havoc. And the best part? Costa and Hazard's movement left so much space for Chelsea's midfield to shine, with Matic and Kante being absolute beasts in the middle of the park. Speaking of Conte, this man was everywhere. He covered every blade of grass, broke up play, and allowed Matic to roam forward a bit more. It was this balance in midfield that gave Chelsea the stability to attack with so much freedom while staying solid defensively. The defensive side of Conte's Chelsea was just as impressive. They weren't a high-pressing team. In fact, they sat back more often than not, forming a compact 5-4-1 when defending. But that made them super hard to break down. The wing-backs would drop deep, the back three dealt with crosses with ease, and Luis, thanks to the extra cover, finally looked composed and in control. Chelsea were nearly impenetrable. Conte's Chelsea wasn't just a team that played good football, they were a tactical masterpiece. Every player knew their role, the system worked like a well-oiled machine, and the rest of the league was left playing catch-up. It's no wonder teams across the Premier League started copying the back three setup after that season. It was too good not to. Inter Milan, back in that 2019-2020 season, finally started giving Juventus a real run for their money in Serie A, without a team that was on fire, led by none other than the tactical genius himself, Antonio Conte. He basically took Inter and transformed them from almost there to "we're actually here," and made the Scudetto race interesting again. Under Conte's magic, Inter didn't just play football, they orchestrated it. They came in second place that season, just a single point behind Juve, which was the closest they'd been to the top in nearly a decade. And the secret sauce, his iconic back three formation that made Inter such a nightmare to break down. It's like he made the whole team dance to the tune of "You'll never get through us." Now, how did he do it? His preferred setups were a 3-1-4-2 or a 3-4-1-2, which means the guy loves his structure but isn't afraid to mix things up either. Players like Lukaku and Brozovic thrived in this system, showing up week after week with performances that kept fans on the edge of their seats. And these formations weren't just about crowding the defence, they were flexible, adjusting based on who they were up against. For example, if a team tried to press Inter, boom, Conte's men had 2 to 3 options on each wing ready to break that press wide open. Conte's style was all about quick, sharp build-ups, and man did they pull it off with precision. Take Lukaku as an example. Conte used him like a battering ram, not just as a target, but also as a setup guy for Lautaro Martinez, who'd sneak in behind defences with perfect timing. They could go long if needed, but they loved to build up with short, calculated passes, almost as if they were challenging opponents to come and try to break their rhythm. And let's talk about those wing-backs. Conte had a whole squad rotation there. Young, Moses, Asamoah, Candreva, they all had their roles, pushing up the flanks or cutting inside to provide more options. It was like watching a well-oiled machine, every part moving with purpose, even defensively. Inter wasn't wild with high pressing, but when they did, they would cut off the central play and force teams out wide, where they'd snatch back control. So, bottom line, Antonio Conte didn't just give Inter a fighting chance, he gave them a blueprint for success. Every match felt like a tactical masterclass, and with Lukaku and Lautaro leading the line, you could sense Inter was building something special. And we all know what happened next. Well, he led them to the trophy. When Antonio Conte took over Tottenham, he brought in his signature tactical approach, and it paid off in terms of improved results. Under Nuno Espirito Santo, Spurs were struggling, sitting 9th in the league and averaging a mere 1.5 points per game. However, with Conte's arrival, the team's average rose to 2.1 points per game, moving them up to 4th during that period. Notably, goals per game almost doubled from 0.9 to 1.7, an immediate sign of the Conte effect. Conte's preferred formation is a 3-4-3, though he occasionally adjusted to a 3-5-2 when Son Heung-min was unavailable. His tactics were simple but effective. Build up play from the back in a way that protected against pressuring opponents and made his team tough to break down. When in possession, wing-backs either stayed deep as easy outlet options or moved up the field if there was little pressure, while the forward wingers narrowed in to provide support in the half spaces. In attack, Harry Kane often dropped deep to pull defenders out, allowing Son and Lucas Moura to attack the vacated space, while wing-backs offered width, making Spurs more versatile. Defensively, Conte's side wasn't overly aggressive in pressing, but preferred a solid, organised 3-4-3 shape, forcing opponents toward the flanks where Spurs would press hard, making central progression difficult. Though not always thrilling to watch, Conte's methods delivered consistency and discipline, lifting Spurs to a more competitive position in the league. It wasn't swashbuckling football, but his structured system brought out the best in his players and made Spurs a tough opponent for anyone, and then he moved to Napoli, where he is currently starting a super team. But before we talk about how he is doing that, please take a minute to subscribe to the channel, as this would help the channel grow. Thank you. Now to Napoli. Conte's made a big change. After his somewhat rocky stint at Tottenham, it seems he's turned things around, and Napoli's position at the top of the table proves it. After Napoli's disappointing finish last season, slipping to a 10th place spot just a year after winning the league, they brought in Antonio Conte. Known for his defensive structure and explosive counterattacks, Conte has shifted the dynamics in Naples significantly. Traditionally, Conte's system thrives with aggressive wing-backs and wide overloads, designed to drive attacks from the flanks into the box, a tactic that led Juventus, Chelsea and Inter to title glory under his management. But at Napoli, he's adapting his approach, moving away from crossing heavy plays to a strategy centered around compact central clusters. Conte's decision to alter his signature formation from a back three setup to a back four has Napoli focusing more on vertical passes and overloads in the center, rather than relying on wide attacks. Instead of wing-backs charging forward, Napoli's wingers like Khvicha Kvaratskhelia and Matteo Politano are shifting inside, clustering in the midfield and creating tight passing lanes. This has allowed Conte to bring out the best in players like Romelu Lukaku, using him as more of a playmaker in central areas who holds up play and sets up others. Conte also strategically uses his midfielders, allowing players like Stanislav Lobotka to drop between the centre-backs, which widens the defence and enables the full-backs to push forward. This creates an overload in the middle, making it challenging for opposing teams to close down. With a front line led by Lukaku running into open spaces, Napoli's attack becomes even more threatening as they quickly exploit channels left by defenders who are drawn to the centre. Defensively, Conte still plays to his strengths, with Napoli transitioning into a 5-3-2 setup without the ball. Instead of high pressing, Napoli falls into a mid-block, maintaining defensive stability while always keeping a few attackers ready to counter. This forces the opposition to hold back players to prevent Napoli's rapid counters, particularly through Kvaratskhelia and Lukaku. Conte's tactical shift has Napoli playing some of the most interesting football in Europe, deviating from his typical blueprint to suit the talent at his disposal. It's a fresh chapter for Conte, and for Napoli's fans, it's already looking like a season to remember. Can he win the league again with Napoli, or is this another Tottenham team? Well, this has always raised a question. Why does Conte do well in his first seasons? You see, Conte has a reputation for thriving in his first season at a new club, and it's no accident. His approach is intense, demanding, and meticulously organised, which brings immediate structure and discipline to any squad he manages. Conte emphasises fitness and tactical clarity from day one, ensuring players fully understand their roles in his system. This intensity catches opponents off guard, as his teams are often among the fittest and most well-drilled in the league. He also has a knack for identifying quick, impactful fixes, whether it's unlocking the potential of a previously underutilised player or switching formations to maximise the team's strengths. By instilling a winning mentality early, Conte's first seasons often see a surge in form and confidence, making his teams title contenders right out of the gate. But why does he always fail in his second seasons? His high-intensity approach demands relentless focus and peak fitness, which can be mentally and physically draining for players over time. As a manager, Conte also tends to be quite rigid, sticking to a system that, while initially effective, becomes predictable. Opponents adapt, and without significant tactical flexibility, Conte's teams can struggle to maintain the same edge. Moreover, his intense and direct coaching style can lead to friction with both players and management. He has high expectations, not just on the pitch, but also in terms of transfers and squad depth. When these demands aren't met, tensions can flare, which often affects team morale and stability. So, while Conte's impact is electric in year one, the same formula can start to wear thin in the second season, with challenges emerging both on and off the pitch. But the good news is that with his changes at Napoli, he would be able to make big differences in the second season. Or what do you think? Thank you for watching this video. You can check out our channel for more videos like this. Till next time.